Welcome to another Excel VBA tutorial. This is a continuation off our last video. So in our last video, we took a single Excel range and we copied it over from Excel into a Word document. So now we're going to move on to multiple Excel ranges. So in this video, we're going to take multiple Excel ranges, copy them, and then move them over to a Word document. So normally when I do like multiple Excel objects and copying them over to another application, usually I break the video into two sections, one where I'm focusing just on a worksheet and then move on to a workbook. Well, in this particular example, we're not going to do that because when we're working with Excel ranges, we don't actually have to we don't have to distinguish the two. So whether we're doing a worksheet or a workbook, the whole strategy is exactly the same. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump in our VBA editor. And then from here, if you haven't already, make sure to insert a new module. And then also we need to do one more formality before we begin. So we have to enable the Word Object Library. So this will allow us to declare and manipulate Word objects from within our Excel VBA environment. So this gives us some benefits when it comes to working with IntelliSense and just overall making our code a little bit easier to read and just easier to understand. So to enable that library, we have to go up to our ribbon bar. So right up here, we're going to go to Tools, down to References. A new window will pop up. Now I've used this library before because I used it in the last one. And so you'll see it right here up at the top. However, if you are new to using this library, you're not going to see it up here at the top like I do. What you're going to have to do is scroll down to M for Microsoft and then W. So it'll be somewhere right around here. And all you want to do is you're going to see it like this. So there's not going to be a checkbox next to it or a check in the box. So you're just going to check it and this will enable it. Also, you might see a different number. So I'm currently on the latest version of Office, so I get the latest object library. However, if you're on an earlier version of Office, then you will see a lower number. That is just referencing your version of Office. Now, unless you're using some very early version of Office, everything we're going to do in this video should work fine. So once you've enabled it, you can press OK, and we can now start writing our subroutine. So I'm going to create a new subroutine, call it copy range to Word, and then underscore, and then I'll do multi, just so that way I have a little note to myself about exactly what it's doing. Press enter. And then the first thing I'm going to do is declare my variables. I'm going to declare two categories of variables. Some of them are going to be related to Word, and then some of them are going to be related to Excel. So the first group, I'm going to declare Word variables. The first one is going to be called Word App. And then this is going to be a Word application. So just like Excel is its own application, Word is its own application. So this particular object variable will house the Word application. And then I want a document in my application. So I'm going to have to create it and then store it somewhere so that way I can manipulate it. So I'm going to declare another object variable called Word Doc. And then this will be a Word dot document. Perfect. So document is kind of like a workbook, if you were going to do an Excel comparison. So in Word, we have documents, and then in Excel, we have workbooks. So it's like I'm creating a new workbook within Word. Okay, now we're going to create our Excel variables. So we're going to declare Excel variables. And then the first one that we're going to do is we're going to declare one that's called range as a variant. Not variable, variant. I'll explain what that is later. And then we're going to declare our Excel range as a variant. So this is going to be the actual range that we want to copy. And then we're going to declare something called range array as variant. And then this is going to be an array of all the ranges that we want to copy over from Excel into Word. And sorry about that, it shouldn't be variant, it should be a range. So your Excel range should be a range object. Sorry about that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new instance of Word. And really, why are we doing that? Well, if you look down here at my little window bar, you can obviously tell Word is not open. So I have to create a new instance of Word. And then once it's open, I can start doing things like creating documents and then copy and pasting objects in between Excel and Word. But I've got to create Word first. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to set my Word app equal to a new Word.application. So I'm using early binding in this particular example. If you want to do late binding, I have another video that talks about that, and all we would do is use the create object framework. And then I want to make sure that I can see my particular Word application, so I'm going to set the visible property equal to true. So this will make it where I can see my application, and then I want it to be the main window on my system. So I'm going to use the activate method to bring it to the front. And so if I run my code just like it is right now, we'll see that it creates a Word application. However, you can obviously tell there's nothing inside of it, so there's no document. I need to create a document inside my application. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to create a new document in my application. And so I'm going to set my Word doc equal to my Word app. And then just like we have a workbooks collection in our Excel application, we have a documents collection in our Word application. And then I'm going to call the add method. So this will add a new document, so that way I have something I can now play around with. And then if I run it now, let's see what we get. Perfect. So as you can tell, we now have an application and we have a document inside of our application. So coming along nicely. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to declare our range array. So we're going to populate our array with all the ranges that we want to copy over. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to populate my range array. And so I'm going to take my range array and then set that equal to an array. So an array is basically just a list of objects, so I can have objects in my array, and then I just usually separate them by a comma. Now my goal is to store each one of these ranges in that array, and as you can tell, there's 2 on sheet 1, and there's also 2 on sheet 2. So I need a way to identify each of the ranges on their respective sheets. Now there's a couple different ways I can do this. I can either use the worksheets collection or the sheets collection, and I can either pass through the index or the name of it. But we know that when we're working with ranges, sometimes that can be, maybe not the best approach, because we understand that if you change the order and you're using the index method, then all of a sudden you will lose context and it won't copy over the right range. However, you can also change the name of it and that will also throw it off. So what I like to do is use the sheet code, and that is something that stays stable regardless of the order of the sheets or the names of the sheet. If you want the sheet code, you just go over here to the VBA project window and you just look for it. So if you go under Microsoft Excel objects within the project that you're currently working in, you'll see that sheet 1 has code sheet 1. So when you first create a sheet, it's just the name of the sheet that's been created as. And then there's a second worksheet that is sheet 2. So in my example, I want sheet 1 dot, and then no, I do not have this memorized, I simply have it written down. And then I want B2 to, E5. And then I want sheet 1, and then I want range, B7 to E10. Okay, so that's the first 2 ranges. I'm just going to copy these 2 over. And then I'm going to put a comma there. And I'm going to change this to sheet 2. And now I have an array of all the ranges that I want to copy over to Word. And so the goal is now to loop through this range array and then copy each one of their respective ranges. So how am I going to do that? Well, I've shown you in previous videos you can do this for loop that does a lower bound and an upper bound, but with arrays there's also a more, at least in my opinion, a simpler way of doing it. We can just do a for each loop. And so with a for each loop, we just got to specify an element. In this example, I'm just going to declare it as a range. And then I'm going to specify my group. Well, my group in this example is a range array. And then I'm going to say next. So this will loop through each element in the range array. Perfect. But that's why we declared this object up here, is because technically we're working with a particular object in our range array, and so we have to define that variable when we're looping through it. So that's why I did that. And I'll explain at the end, technically we don't have to declare this one. I've found that it works sometimes and doesn't work, but I'll explain that later. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, now that we're looping through it, I'm going to set my Excel range equal to the range that I am on in my loop. And so really all this is doing is creating a reference to the range I want to copy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that range. I'm going to call the copy method. All right. And then we've learned that sometimes when we're talking in between application, a certain error can pop up. That error is related to the clipboard. And so what can happen is, even though we're calling the copy method, that information doesn't actually make it into the clipboard. And the reason why is because our script's going a little bit too fast and it's just too chaotic, I guess, if that's the best way to describe it. What we have to do in order to make sure our script works is we need to pause it for a certain amount of time. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the Excel application, just for like 2 seconds. Usually that's more than enough. Sometimes you might have to do a little bit more if you're using a very large range of cells, but normally 2 seconds is fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the application, and in the application, so the Excel application, there's a method called wait, and I can specify how long I want to pause my application. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say pause it for 2 seconds. Make sure it is AM and not PM. I've done this in the past and it was an accident, but if you do PM, you will be waiting for a very, very, very long time. And so I'm sure you don't want to do that. You will have to, do a task manager and close out your program. So please make sure it is AM and not PM. Okay, after we've paused it, we've made sure it's now in the clipboard. Let's actually paste it into a document. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, with the current selection, paste the range. And so I'm going to say with word app dot selection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the paste special method. Oh, got to put my dot. Paste special. And then I'm going to paste it as an OLE object with a link. And so I'm going to put the data type equal to Word. I think it is Word paste. OLE object. And then I want my object to have a link. And so we've seen in the previous videos, sometimes having links can make the formatting a little bit off. Well, I find that when I do a paste OLE object, I don't get those weird formatting errors that we were seeing with the other one. And so if you're running into that problem, I encourage you to do it like this, because this seems to be the more stable method, at least from my experience. And then I want a link to it, so I'm going to make sure that I set my link, property equal to true. Perfect. Just to kind of go over this one a little bit is, just like Excel, you can have an active selection. Word, you can have an active selection too. So when we create a new document within Word, it's going to select somewhere in that document, usually right at the top. And so really what I'm saying is I'm going to work with that particular selection and then just copy whatever I have in my clipboard to that particular selection. So that's what that's doing. Otherwise, you'll see that you can actually put it in different areas, but in this particular one, I'm kind of keeping it simple and just working with the current selection. However, if I leave it just the way it is, it's going to paste each one of them right on top of each other. So ideally what I want to do is I want to take each range object and put them on its own individual page. So the next thing I have to do in my script is actually add a new page. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new page. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in the Word app and then into our active document. And then there is something called the sections collection. And then these are just the different sections of your Word document. Really, they're pages. But again, at this point, we'll just kind of define it properly and say it's sections. But it's really just pages. And then from there, we can call the add method. And this will add a new page to our document. Okay, and so simply because we've added a new page doesn't mean we're on that new page, and so we actually have to go to it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the newly created page, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the Word app, and then there's something with the selection property, and then the go to method. So this is a method that we can call with our selection, and basically what it's doing is it's changing our selection. Well, what kind of go-to method do you want to use? And we're going to say Word go to page, and then basically which page do you want to go to now that you've kind of specified the method of go to that you want to use. Well, in this example, I just want to go to next, and basically just means like go to the next page. Okay, so we're on that new page. And then the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear my clipboard. Again, this just tends to help with the overall stability of the script. Sometimes if I don't clear it, it kind of crashes because something's already in there and then it's trying to add something else and it can't do a good job of managing that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in my Excel application object and then in the cut copy mode property, and then I'm just going to set that equal to false. And what this will do is it will make sure that there's nothing really in the clipboard for us. So, other than that though, that's pretty much the entire script. So we can technically run it right now. And then at the end, I'll kind of explain something of how we can change this one. Okay, let's run it. Okay. So, it's not super quick, but, I kind of always say, hey, it's better than what it was. Uh-oh, did it keep going? I don't think it copied over the other ones. Oh, okay. Well, see, there we ran into the clipboard error. So let's try it for 3 seconds. It was trying to paste something. It didn't see it in the clipboard. And so because it didn't see it in the clipboard, it basically freaked out. So let's try running it again. I'm kind of glad that happened because it's just showing you that, hey, this can happen. And then it's not necessary that we wrote anything wrong. It's just that we have to actually pause our script a little bit longer. So, if you run into that, don't feel like you did anything wrong. So now it worked on that particular example. But again, that's really just demonstrating to you that clipboard error. It's a pain to work with sometimes. And as frustrating as it might be, you might have to pause it in some cases like 4 or 5 seconds if it's really bad. I'm kind of surprised it's happening with such a small range, though. That tends to be a little uncommon. I will say sometimes what I've done in the past is I've actually changed this line right here. And all I've done is I've changed it to be just range.copy. So this is a little bit more simplified. And then really what I can do is I can get rid of this variable. And it seems to work fine. Other times I've done it, it doesn't seem to work well. I'm going to try it and see if it works. If it does, then great. If it doesn't, then you can test it on your own. But basically what I'm doing is I'm not actually assigning it to the Excel range variable. I'm just keeping it as kind of this more broad object called variant, and then I'm copying it. So let's try it again. Okay, so that time it worked. So yeah, that's just, again, technically another way you can write it. Again, more for informational purposes, but it's demonstrating to you that, hey, there's kind of multiple ways that you can write this script, and it will still work because, if you look at it, it's still a linked OLE object. I will just give you a heads up. I've seen some errors with this one where it doesn't behave correctly in the sense of it's all of a sudden saying, well, there's no object associated with it or something like that. I don't really know why that pops up. I haven't found a good answer for it. But if you want to, you can always try and then just simply just do a range.copy and keep it as a variant object because, it is fewer lines of code, and I think it's a little bit more intuitive. It's like we're just copying your object. So, just for your reference. But other than that, that does it for today's video. So if you have any questions about how to copy over, Excel ranges into Word or anything like that, put those questions down in the comments below. Also, if you can make sure to like the video, we always appreciate the support. And then also, if you're not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you get regular updates as we release new videos. So we're going to start exploring more topics in VBA, whether it be related to Word, PowerPoint, Access, or Excel. But we do have some stuff planned out, and I want to make sure you guys are getting notifications when it's coming out. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.